Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles. I still remember the night everything shifted. For months, intimacy had been a dead thing between Jessica and me. At first, she had excuses: stress from work, exhaustion, headaches, a sudden focus on fitness that meant she was too tired at night. Then, the excuses turned into avoidance and finally into outright indifference. I should have seen it coming. But the moment that truly shattered me wasn't when she refused to touch me. It was when, after all that distance, she suddenly sat me down, held my hands and smiled. A warm, radiant smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. "I've been thinking," she said, squeezing my fingers in hers. "I want to have a baby." Just like that, like flipping a switch. For months, she had barely acknowledged me in bed. Now, suddenly, she wanted a child? I should have been happy, thrilled, even. Instead, my stomach twisted into knots. Something was off. I played along. I let my eyes widen in surprise, let the corners of my lips lift in an eager smile. "A baby? Wow, Jessica. That's unexpected." She nodded quickly, her enthusiasm almost forced. I know we haven't really talked about it, but I think it's time. We've been married long enough, we have stability, and I just feel like it's the right moment." Her voice was too careful, her expression too rehearsed. I searched her face for a clue, something to confirm the unsettling feeling creeping over me. And then, as if by some cosmic miscalculation on her part, she made a mistake. Her hand unconsciously moved to her stomach. It was subtle, barely a movement, just a brief press of her palm, as if checking for something, reassuring herself of something. Something that was already there. And that's when I knew. She was already pregnant. The moment the truth became unavoidable. From that moment on, my mind ran at 100 miles per hour. I started piecing things together, the late nights, the sudden fitness obsession, the distant behavior. First, I thought she was just drifting away emotionally. But now I had no doubt. She was pregnant. But not by me. I had been so blind. I kept my mask in place, let her think I was considering it. Played the role of the thoughtful husband. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, acting hesitant but hopeful. "You want us to try?" She nodded quickly, her whole face lighting up. "Yes," she breathed. "I want this more than anything." I felt sick. She wanted this, but she already had it. And the worst part? She thought I was dumb enough to fall for it. I wrapped my arms around her, pressing a kiss to her hair while she sighed in relief against my chest. But while my lips were on her skin, my mind was already racing. The silent investigation begins. Over the next few days, I started watching her closely. She started eating differently. At first, I thought it was just part of her usual health kick, but then I noticed the real reason. She was avoiding things pregnant women aren't supposed to have. She cut out caffeine. She avoided alcohol. She even stopped eating sushi, which she used to love. And then, the real kicker, I caught her in a lie. One night, she came home looking exhausted, dropping her purse on the table. "Ugh, work was hell today," she groaned, rubbing her forehead. Something about the way she said it felt scripted. So I asked, "Where'd you have lunch?" She hesitated. "Oh, just at the office. Ate at my desk." That was it. That 1 second of hesitation was all I needed. Because I already knew the truth. She hadn't been at the office. She had been somewhere else. I didn't know where, not yet. But I knew I would find out. A small clue that changes everything. A few days later, fate delivered another piece of the puzzle straight into my hands. Jessica had gone to bed early, complaining of nausea, another clue. Her purse was still sitting on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. Not yet. But as I reached for my phone, I accidentally knocked her purse over. A few items spilled out, one of them a small folded piece of paper. A doctor's appointment reminder. OBGYN department. I picked it up, staring at it as my pulse pounded in my ears. She wasn't just pregnant. She had already started her prenatal care. Without telling me, I put the paper back carefully, my hands steady even as my heart thundered in my chest. This was it. This was the proof. She had been lying to me for months. The question now wasn't whether she was cheating. It was who the father was. And I knew just the person who could help me find out. The call that changed everything. That night, as Jessica slept beside me, I sent a single message to my best friend, Ryan. "Hey man, can we talk tomorrow? It's important." He replied almost instantly. "Of course, bro. You good?" I stared at the screen, gripping my phone so tight my knuckles turned white. Not yet, but I will be. Because I had a plan now, and she would never see it coming. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Jessica was curled up beside me, breathing softly, her hand resting protectively over her stomach in her sleep. The child that wasn't mine. Every inhale and exhale from her only cemented my anger, but I forced myself to remain calm. Patience was key. I had a plan now, and I wasn't going to rush into anything recklessly. Tomorrow I would talk to Ryan, and I had a feeling that conversation would change everything. A casual meetup that was anything but casual. Ryan and I met up for coffee the next morning, like we often did on weekends. He was my best friend since college, the kind of guy who had always had my back no matter what. As we sat outside the cafe, I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the steam rise. I didn't want to rush into the topic. I needed to be careful with my words. "How's work been?" I asked casually. Ryan sighed. "Same old. Long hours, endless patience. The hospital's a madhouse." I nodded. Then, as if it were just a passing thought, I added, "You ever run into Jessica at the hospital? She mentioned she's been having some checkups lately." Ryan frowned, thinking. Then, something shifted in his expression. An almost imperceptible hesitation. Bingo. I kept my face neutral, but my pulse hammered. "Actually," Ryan exhaled, rubbing his jaw. "Yeah, man. I did see her." I forced my tone to stay light. "Oh yeah." He hesitated, his eyes searching mine as if debating whether to say more. Then, in a single breath, he dropped the bomb that would destroy my marriage. She wasn't alone. Everything inside me went still. "Who was she with?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Ryan leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Some guy. I didn't recognize him at first, but then I saw his badge. He's a doctor. Works in another department. I think his name's Jason." Jason. I clenched my fists under the table, gripping my coffee cup so hard I thought it might shatter. "He was with her in the OBGYN department, man," Ryan continued, his tone cautious now. "I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I heard something, and I wasn't sure if I should tell you." My jaw tightened. "Tell me." Ryan exhaled heavily, rubbing the back of his neck. "I overheard them talking about their baby, their future. She said something about finally telling you soon." Couldn't breathe. Ryan's words felt like gunfire to my chest. Their baby, their future. She was waiting for the right time to tell me, and she thought I'd be dumb enough to believe her. Ryan must have seen the change in my expression because he put his hands up quickly. "Look, man, I wasn't gonna assume anything. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But when you asked me just now, I knew I had to tell you." I sat back, inhaling deeply, forcing myself to stay in control. Ryan had no idea what he had just done. He had just handed me the final proof I needed. But instead of reacting, instead of letting the fury take over, I nodded slowly. "Ryan," I said, my voice calm, "you did the right thing telling me." His face twisted in concern. "Man, I'm sorry. I really hope I'm wrong." But he wasn't wrong. Not even close. I gave him a tight smile, masking the storm inside me. Yeah, you do. And I appreciate it. But I wasn't wrong either. And now it was time for the next move. Turning the tables, the party invitation. When I got home, Jessica was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she made tea. She looked so at peace, so content. She had no idea that I knew. I kissed her cheek like any doting husband would and let my hand linger on her stomach. A silent declaration of war. Then, I smiled warmly and said, "I was thinking, we should celebrate." Jessica blinked up at me, surprised. "Celebrate?" "Yeah. I mean, you wanted a baby for so long. And now we're finally making it happen." The irony almost made me laugh. Her face lit up. She wasn't expecting this. She thought I was still clueless, still trapped in her little web of lies. "Oh, Nathan, that's such a sweet idea," she beamed, stepping into my arms. "I'd love that." I kissed her forehead. "We'll invite everyone, family, friends, even your work colleagues. You should invite some of your closest friends from the hospital too." The perfect trap. Jessica nodded eagerly. "That sounds amazing. I'll invite Jason too. He's been so supportive through this whole process." "I bet he has." I forced a smile, nodding. "Yeah, he should be there too." I watched as she grabbed her phone, completely unaware that she was digging her own grave, because that party wouldn't just be a celebration. It would be her public execution. And Ryan, I was going to make sure he was there too. Jessica was radiant. She walked around the party like a queen, accepting congratulations, exchanging laughs, and reveling in the attention. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach, basking in the glow of being the soon-to-be mother. If you didn't know the truth, you'd think she was just a happy wife celebrating her first child with a loving husband. But I knew better, and tonight so would everyone else. The perfect setup. The house was filled with friends, family, and co-workers, all there to celebrate our pregnancy. I had made sure to invite everyone important in Jessica's life, ensuring that when the truth unraveled, she would have nowhere to hide. Her parents were here. My parents were here. Her best friends. And most importantly, Jason was here. He had arrived late, dressed in a crisp navy suit, flashing that charming doctor's smile at everyone. He looked too comfortable, shaking hands, greeting Jessica's friends, as if he belonged, as if this was his victory too. The arrogance. Jessica rushed to greet him the moment he arrived. She hugged him, a bit too tightly, before stepping back, her eyes flickering toward me to see if I noticed. I smiled warmly at them both. "Jason, glad you could make it, man," I said, extending my hand. He shook it, his grip firm, his confidence unshaken. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he said smoothly. Jessica laughed nervously beside him. "Jason has been such a great support through this whole process," she gushed. "I bet he has." I clapped Jason on the shoulder. "Well, tonight is about celebrating, right? So let's enjoy it." He nodded, oblivious to the trap tightening around his throat. I turned and spotted Ryan in the crowd, the final piece of the puzzle. He had no idea what was coming next. The toast that changed everything. The party had been going on for about an hour when I finally decided it was time. I tapped my glass with a spoon, signaling for attention. Conversations quieted, and all eyes turned toward me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice warm and full of false excitement. "First of all, I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. This is such a special moment for Jessica and me, and we're so grateful to share it with the people we love." Jessica smiled at me, glowing under the spotlight. She had no idea that this light would soon expose her for the fraud she was. I continued, "Bringing a child into this world is a blessing. It's a journey of love, trust, and most importantly, family. And I couldn't be more honored to take this journey with my wife." There were murmurs of approval, some claps. I let the words sink in for a moment before shifting gears. "And you know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. And in our case, Jessica and I have been lucky enough to have some truly amazing people supporting us. People who've been there for us in ways I could never imagine." I turned slightly, my eyes locking onto Ryan. "And one of those amazing people is my best friend, Ryan." Ryan looked surprised, but he smiled, raising his glass. "Of course, man. You know I've always got your back." I smiled. Yeah, you do. And that's why I think it's only right for you to tell everyone what you told me the other day." The room shifted. Jessica's smile faltered. Jason's expression twitched, something uncertain creeping in. Ryan looked confused. What do you mean?" I kept my smile intact. "Remember? About how you ran into Jessica at the hospital, in the OBGYN department." A few heads turned. Whispers started. Jessica's face paled. Ryan hesitated. Yeah, man, but tell them the rest, I said, my voice cool and sharp. Ryan blinked, glancing at Jessica. Nathan, I don't think. It's okay, I interrupted, feigning reassurance. We're all family here. Go ahead, man. Tell them what you saw. Word for word. The weight of the moment settled over the party. Ryan looked around, realizing that every single person in the room was now waiting for him to speak. I saw the panic in Jessica's eyes. She shook her head at Ryan ever so slightly. But Ryan wasn't built for deception. He wasn't Jason. He swallowed, then said hesitantly, I saw Jessica at the hospital with Jason. A collective shift in the room. People murmured. Some turned to stare at Jason, who suddenly looked very, very uncomfortable. Jessica grabbed Ryan's arm. Ryan, stop. But he didn't. He cleared his throat and continued. They were talking about the pregnancy and about their future. I heard them say, our baby. The room exploded. Gasps. Conversations overlapping. I turned to Jessica, my expression pure steel. You were never planning to tell me, were you? She shook her head wildly, tears forming. Nathan, no. It's not what it looks like. I laughed. A hollow, cold laugh. Not what it looks like? I repeated, my voice cutting through the noise. So you weren't in the hospital with Jason? You weren't talking about your future child together? Jason went pale. Lena, Jason muttered, stepping back slightly. What the hell? Jessica turned to him, panic rising. Jason, But it was too late. The room had already made up its mind. The affair partner's wife gets her justice. And then the final, most brutal strike. From the back of the room, a woman stepped forward. A woman I had personally invited. Jason's wife. She had been silent all night, watching, listening. And now she walked right up to Jason and slapped him so hard his head snapped to the side. You lying piece of garbage, she hissed. The party erupted again, guests whispering and gasping. Jason looked like he wanted to disappear. I turned back to Jessica, shaking my head. I wonder, how many other people you planned to betray before you got caught? Tears streamed down her face, her carefully built fantasy crumbling into dust. But there was no sympathy left in me. You deserve everything that's coming, I whispered. And with that I walked away. Jessica stood frozen in the center of the room, her face a mixture of shock, panic, and sheer devastation. The party, the event she thought would be her glorious moment, had turned into a nightmare before her very eyes. Her parents looked at her as if they didn't recognize their own daughter. Her friends whispered behind their hands, some shaking their heads in disappointment. Jason, her secret lover and father of her child, was standing a few feet away, rubbing his jaw where his wife had slapped him. And me? I was watching it all crumble. For the first time in months I felt at peace. Jason's wife delivers her own final blow. Jason's wife, Emily, wasn't done. She stepped closer, her voice dripping pure venom. You know, she said, turning toward Jason, I actually had doubts before. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. But now, thanks for confirming every single suspicion I had. Jason swallowed hard. Emily, baby, let's talk. Talk? She laughed bitterly. You weren't interested in talking when you were screwing another man's wife, were you? Jessica winced, finally snapping out of her daze. Emily, please, don't make this worse. Emily turned on her like a storm, her fury now directed at Jessica. Oh, you don't get to ask for mercy, you cheating, disgusting homewrecker, Emily hissed. Did you really think you'd get away with this? That you could just have an affair and then pass his child off as your husband's? Jessica's lip trembled. I didn't. You didn't what? Emily snapped. Didn't think? Didn't care. Jason reached for her arm. Babe, let's just. Emily yanked her arm free. Don't touch me. You and your filthy little mistress can go straight to hell. And with that, she pulled a manila envelope from her purse and threw it at Jason's chest. Divorce papers, she spat. Enjoy the rest of your miserable life. The entire room gasped. Jason's face drained of color. Emily turned to me, her eyes flashing with anger and an odd sense of solidarity. "You deserve better," she said simply, before walking out of the house, head held high. And just like that, Jason's entire world crumbled, too. Jessica's pathetic attempts to salvage the wreckage. Jessica spun to face me, desperation in her eyes. "Nathan, please," she whispered, stepping closer. "I never meant for this to happen." I stared at her, at the woman I had once loved, the woman who had betrayed me, the woman who had denied me intimacy for months, only to suddenly act like she wanted a child, when she was already carrying another man's baby. "You never meant for what to happen, Jessica?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. She shook her head frantically. I got caught up in something I didn't know how to stop." I let out a cold laugh. "So what? You were going to let me raise Jason's baby as my own? Pretend like everything was normal?" Jessica opened her mouth, then closed it, because there was no defense for what she had done. The final knife twist, legal and financial ruin. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my own envelope. Jessica's eyes flickered to it, confusion and fear mingling. "What's that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I tossed it onto the coffee table. "Divorce papers," I said smoothly. Her entire body sagged. I continued, my tone sharper now. "You'll find that I've made sure you walk away with exactly what you deserve, nothing." Her eyes widened in panic. But the house, the accounts." I smirked. "The house was never in your name. The accounts? You signed a prenuptial agreement before we got married. Remember?" She gasped, realization hitting her like a brick wall. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "I had my lawyer go through everything, Jessica. Since you committed adultery, you don't get a single cent. Not a penny of my money. Not this house. Nothing." Tears welled in her eyes. "Nathan, please, I don't have anywhere to go," she whispered. I shrugged. "Not my problem." The room was deathly silent. I turned to face the guests, raising my voice so everyone could hear. "Well," I said, smiling, "I think we've had enough excitement for one night. Thank you all for coming." Jessica looked around, realizing she had no allies left. Her friends couldn't even look her in the eye. Her parents looked absolutely crushed. Jason, he was too busy reading the divorce papers his wife had just thrown at him. Jessica was utterly alone, and I wanted her to feel that isolation, because she had brought this on herself. The aftermath, freedom at last. I walked out of the house, leaving her standing in the middle of the wreckage she had created. As I stepped outside, the night air felt different, lighter. I had spent months drowning in doubt, anger, and betrayal. But now I was free. As I made my way to my car, I pulled out my phone and saw a message from Ryan. "Man, I had no idea it was that bad. If you need anything, I'm here." I smiled, shaking my head. I had everything I needed. A future without a lying, cheating wife. A future where I wasn't being played for a fool. And as I started my engine and pulled away from the house that no longer felt like a home, I realized something. Jessica had spent so long trying to trap me in a false reality. But in the end, she had only trapped herself. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.